Hello, Cleveland. We have officially sounded the alarm on the first 1085 Victory Pod of the year. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I'm not going to say as always because he's missed the last two episodes, but I have Jack McCurry with me here, my co-host. How you doing tonight, Jack?
Doing well. Like you said, it's the first Victory Pod of the season. Hopefully there's many more down the line, but ready to break down this game.
Yeah, we went away from our traditional intro. We wanted to sound the alarm on the Victory Pod for the first time this year, and I think every time that we have one of these, we're going to use that intro just so we can get into everything we saw on the football field today, and we're here to discuss the Browns' 23-3 win on Monday Night Football against the New York Jets. It's their first win on Monday Night Football since 2008. Coincidentally, this is the 50th year of Monday Night Football, and the Browns played the Jets in the first ever game on Monday Night Football, which the Browns won 31-21. So 50 years later, they go into New York, get the W. Jack, what's your biggest takeaway from tonight's win against the New York Jets?
I mean, just, when I look at this game, it's clearly things still are not perfect with the Browns, but they were able to put last week's debacle behind them, and they pushed forward. It was a complete team effort in that victory. Offense, had their moments. Obviously, the defense shut down the Jets' offense, and then special teams made some big plays as well. So a good all-around team win for Freddie Kitchens' first win as a head coach. So obviously there's things they need to clean up big time, and they can't mess around with the upcoming schedule, but a win's a win, and that's something that we all got to move forward with.
I know a win's a win, and there are people talking online that a Browns 20-point win, something I couldn't tell you the last time we had one of those, and people are upset with that we only won by 20. So relax, we won the game. It's time to celebrate. We're 1-1. It's been a long time since we haven't been 0-2, so I'm glad that we got a win on the board in the first two games, and this Sunday for sure is going to be challenging, but we're here to discuss this game tonight, and what we're going to do for you is we have 5 key plays from tonight's game that led to the victory, and we're going to discuss each one. The first one was a 4th and 2 from the Jets' 24-yard line. The Browns decided to go for it. The pass was incomplete to Taywan Taylor, newly acquired from the Tennessee Titans. The defender was called for holding on the ensuing play. Nick Chubb ran 19 yards for a touchdown. Jack, talk about that sequence. Are you surprised the Browns decided to go for it on the Jets' 24-yard line with it being 4th and 2?
Not at all, really. I mean, when you have guys like Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken, and just by looking at their offense, that they're going to be aggressive. So it didn't shock me that they were going to go for it. And even Booger McFarland called egos. It was a pick play. They ran Beckham in motion, and I think the focus was on him. And then Baker, threw the ball to Taylor. Obviously, Harrison held him, and, it benefited the Browns. And the next play, they gave the ball to Chubb, and Chubb, almost went down, but he kept his feet moving and was able to get back up and run it into the end zone. So obviously a big turning point in the game, and it started the momentum for us, and we never looked back from that point.
Yeah, after or before that, the Browns had hit 2 field goals. Austin Seibert hit 2 field goals, so that made it, I think it was 13-3 at that point, or was it 13-0?
13-0.
13-0. So, obviously getting that touchdown, continued to give us some momentum. And, besides that touchdown run, Nick Chubb had a really rough time carrying the football today. Besides that, he had 17 carries and, do the quick math here, 43 yards. So getting those 19 on that one play kind of helped pat his ass. But otherwise, they had a kind of a rough time running the football tonight. But, obviously getting in the end zone at that point of the game to go up 13-0 is huge, and I'm very surprised that the Browns weren't able to get their running game on track the rest of the game, but getting in the end zone there for that first touchdown, going up 13-0, obviously one of our 5 key plays of the game. Our next key play is towards the end of the half. The Browns got the ball back after the Jets were forced to punt from their own end zone. The Browns had 3rd and 20 from midfield with 20 seconds remaining. Those kinds of plays at the end of the half, typically you're probably looking at a draw run, but the Browns decided to throw the football, and Baker Mayfield was able to find Jarvis Landry over the middle for a 25-yard pass. They ran up, spiked it, and Austin Seibert was able to nail the field goal, making it 16-3 going into the half. Jack, when you look at that sequence there, obviously that's a tough play to make at the end of the half and be able to spike it. But being able to convert 3rd and 20 with 20 seconds left, that's a big risk throwing that football deep over the middle.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was an aggressive approach because the Browns were set up in excellent field position because of a poor punt by the Jets. And then, Beckham gets hurt on the deep throw, which turns out he's actually just cramping up and ran off to get an IV, and that's why he ran back to the locker room. And then, Robinson gets called for holding and backs him up even more. But, Landry is a guy that, tends to not get as much respect on the field for his play, but he's a guy that you can throw it to and depend on 9 times out of 10 to make a play, and obviously he did. Baker trusted him there. Yeah, it was a risky throw down the middle of the field, especially with safeties like May and Adams, but Landry was able to haul it in and then very quickly got up there to spike the ball. And Seibert had a really good game this week. I kind of gave him some slack last week for the missed extra point, but he shook it off and hit 3 field goals this week. And, he played a huge role, like I said, out of all 3 phases. Special teams played a huge part in the win tonight.
Yeah, that's why he's definitely one of our 1085 top dogs of the game, and we'll get to that poll a little bit later. But let's talk about our third key play of the game. That was the 4th down stop at the 11-yard line. The Jets were driving into Browns territory. They got down to 13. They had a 4th and 2, like the Browns did early in the first half, but the Jets were not able to convert that 4th down and 2, and the Browns stopped the Jets, who were having a really good drive. Falk, who came in for the Jets after Simeon left for injury, started to get in a rhythm. They started running the football well with Le'Veon Bell. They got all the way down to 13, had a 4th and 2, but the Browns were able to make a stop. How big of a momentum shift was that in this game based on the fact that the Jets had built quite a bit up on that drive and looked like they were going to score to make it a 16-10 game?
Yeah, I mean, if the Jets end up scoring a touchdown, who knows how the game ends up playing out. And like you said, Falk got in, he got into a rhythm, was able to make some plays. Obviously, they were leaning on Le'Veon Bell, but then, connecting on some good balls to Anderson and getting Ty Montgomery involved. And then, that last play, they made some pressure on Falk. He tried to dump it off to Bell, and the defense was able to stop. Greedy Williams and Joe Schobert stopped him short of the 1st down marker. So obviously the momentum shifted right back to Cleveland in one big play. And then right after that, another big play took place.
Yeah, the momentum shifted back to us after we got that 4th down stop, and that leads us into our 4th key play of the game. The very next play, Baker Mayfield hits a slant over the middle to Odell Beckham Jr. He takes one cut and runs it for 89 yards for a touchdown. It's very fitting that Odell has that long touchdown run in his return to MetLife Stadium, where he holds, you saw on a TV screen there, how many records he has in MetLife Stadium with over 3,000 yards, over 20 touchdowns. So, that big play to Odell on that slant move, he was able to make the safety miss. Greg Williams, big Angel safety, couldn't make the play. And I'm sure Greg Williams learned who Odell really was on that 89-yard touchdown pass.
Absolutely, and you could see his reaction. He was livid over the coverage on that play, and it makes you wonder if Greg's going to stop putting that Angel back there in the secondary. He's probably not, because he's stubborn and he's going to stick to his guns. But, mean, that play was a thing of beauty. You know, it was like you said, it was a quick slant to Beckham, and then Beckham did the rest of the work. He turned on the jets and was running. And if you watch, Damian Ratley ran stride for stride with Beckham all the way down the field. It was an unbelievable play. It fired everybody up on social media, and that's why we brought Odell Beckham here, to make those exciting plays that are going to change the course of a game, whether it's the one-handed catch early in the game or, you know, a big long touchdown, which happened to be the longest touchdown for the Browns since 2013 when Whedon connected with Gordon for 95 yards. So it really cemented the game right after that point. So what an unbelievable play.
I honestly and truly forgot about that Whedon touchdown pass to Josh Gordon. I think, you know, anything besides before the 0-16 season is kind of like post-traumatic stress syndrome. You just kind of don't want to relive it. You don't want to think about it. And I totally forgot about that long touchdown pass to Josh Gordon. Our fifth key play of the game was another defensive play, and it came, I want to say it was at the end of the third quarter or early fourth quarter. The Jets were driving again. They got down inside the red zone. They completed a pass, and Joe Schobert was able to force a fumble inside the 10-yard line. T.J. Carey recovered a fumble. Looked like the Jets were driving again, like they were on the other time the Browns stopped them inside the red zone. But they were driving again. Schobert knocked the ball out of there. He had a tremendous game today. He's also one of our top dogs in our poll that we'll talk about here in a minute. But talk about Joe Schobert, the way he played today, culminating inside with that forced fumble inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah, he had a fantastic game, over 10 tackles, couple for a loss, and right here, he doesn't make that play. Le'Veon Bell's probably walking in for a touchdown. But, Schobert went in there and, was right place, right time, boom, smashed the ball out. And T.J. Carey was right there in the perfect spot to recover that fumble. That pretty much right there sealed the game with 7 minutes to go. So, you never know if they score a touchdown, what happens, but luckily our defense stepped up again down in the red zone and prevented a touchdown from happening. And I think this is what our defense, we all expected it to be coming into the season. Obviously, they had some hiccups last week against Tennessee, but to bounce back and make some major plays in critical moments, it was huge for us in the win tonight.
Yeah, they bounced back in a big time this week. And, there were the big plays last week that got them. They really limited those this week. There were maybe 2 or 3 that were about 20 yards. So they really did a good job of limiting those big plays this week. And they're really going to have to be up to the task of doing the same next week when you have Goff coming to town with Todd Gurley as a running back, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. They're really good receivers, so they're going to have a lot of playmakers next week where they're going to have to limit plays. And it's nice to see Steve Wilkes and that Browns defense really bounce back this week and hold the Jets to only 3 points in this game. Those are our 5 keys, our 5 key plays that led to the Browns' victory tonight. Those are our 5 key plays of the game. From the game tonight in the win. Those are our 5 key plays in the Browns win over the Jets tonight. And what we're going to do now is we're going to continue to break down this game. We have some topics that we want to run through. And Jack, the first thing I wanted to ask you is there were some throws tonight from Baker Mayfield that were high above the receiver's head and were incomplete passes. You saw that a little bit last week, too. Are you concerned with Baker throwing it too high? Is he just not getting his feet set? Is he trying to rush and make a big play? Why is this happening?
He looks like a different quarterback, and obviously he's growing and maturing, but I just think, and we've seen this a lot last year at some points. The Houston game is the one thing I recall. I just think Baker at times is just trying to make a home run play. And even, Booger McFarland was talking about it too. Like, he's not, utilizing the checkdowns more. I think the interception he threw, Chubb was wide open on the right side, and he threw it into double coverage. And Baker, gets the comparison to Brett Favre a lot, and I can see it at some points watching him. He's very aggressive. He tries to make the big play, whether we're up 20 or down 20, and Baker's got to be careful with the football. They even said it, since he's taken over as a starter for the Browns, he's thrown the most interceptions in the NFL. So while we love him for his playmaking and his leadership and everything, he's got to take care of the football, and he's got to be smarter with the football. But I also think it's a result of the play calling as well.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, because the first couple weeks, they've had a hard time, and maybe it's Freddie trying to adjust to being a head coach and a play caller all at once. Talk about what you've thought of the play calling so far, and how you think the Browns can improve with that as they move on during the rest of the season.
Yeah, I do, and I was talking about this with somebody during the game. I truly think that Todd Monken has more of a say in the play calling than we are led to believe. I know Freddie's making the play calling, but it just seems as though there's a more aggressive approach to the offensive scheme, and I do think Monken has a big say on that just because of his background, whether it was at Oklahoma State or in Tampa. And we seen Freddie. He was quick and decisive. He was careful with the football last year, and it seems we've taken a more aggressive approach. I think we're not utilizing Chubb as much in the running game, and there's some points, and my biggest thing was late in the game. And under 2 minutes left, Baker took that last sack. Why were we even throwing the ball at that point? We're up 20, just run the ball, chew the clock down, and get out of there. If Baker gets hurt, that's on Freddie Kitchens. It's some of the play calling is a little ridiculous. Hopefully they get better with it as the season goes along. But all in all, I haven't been a big fan of it. I understand you want to keep everybody happy. You want to get all the playmakers the ball, but you got to be smart with the football as well, especially when you have it on offense.
Maybe it's also a result of them trying to figure out how to best utilize this offensive line that has struggled at times. They really struggled last week. They were much better this week, but I thought that Greg Robinson still struggled at left tackle this week. Chris Hubbard was better. Not great, but he was better than he was last week. So I think it's going to take some time for this offense to completely gel all together and find a rhythm as a whole. And once they do that, hopefully it can stay clicking, because week 9 or week 10, they're going to have Kareem Hunt coming back. So they're going to have to add another piece to this offense. And so at some point over these next couple of weeks, while you're playing very tough opponents, you have the Rams and you have the Ravens coming up back-to-back. Those are going to be two very tough games. So they're really going to have to figure out how to get this offense to gel, especially with the offensive play calling. You have one of the top defenses in the league coming in next week with the Rams on Sunday Night Football. The Ravens aren't as good. They gave up over 350 passing yards to Kyler Murray yesterday, but still won the game. But they're going to have to figure out how to gel as an offense, get everything together, and integrate all the pieces and weapons that they have, and mask offensive line issues that we think will probably be there all season. And they're going to have a huge test with that next week with the Rams coming in. One of the things we want to discuss is Myles Garrett. He had 3 sacks tonight, but he also had a handful of penalties as well to go with those. He had 2 roughing the quarterback penalties, one that resulted in Trevor Siemian leaving the game with a bad ankle. It looked really bad on TV, but he was able to walk off somehow. So he had 2 roughing the passer penalties. He also had a couple offsides as well. I know Myles is extremely talented, and he is extremely aggressive at getting off the ball. But I think there has to come a point, Jack, where he needs to be a smart football player, avoid the roughing the passer penalties. Those are definitely avoidable. But even the offside ones are too. At some point, he has to become a smart football player, so he's not hurting his team in crucial situations.
Right, and I think Myles knows that. First of all, what an unbelievable game. 3 sacks. He's already got 5 on the season. I just seen that that's the most by any defensive player since Clay Matthews III back in 2012. He had 5 sacks through 2 games as well that year. But Myles, I think he realizes he's got to be smarter. I know Booger McFarland mentioned he had 10 offside penalties last year, which was the most in the league. Obviously, we know what kind of a freak he is with his speed, his athleticism, his strength, the whole 9 yards with him. The whole roughing the passer calls, first of all, the one with the body weight penalty, I think is a ridiculous rule. And, these things happen. It's football. Obviously, the second one that hurt Simeon, it was bad. But I also, and this might be a bad take by me, I just think, like, when you're running at a force like that, it's hard to stop. I'm not a major in physics, but I would have to think, like, a guy running that fast is not going to be able to stop so abruptly without colliding into someone like that. Hopefully Simeon's okay. Myles just apologized on Twitter while we're recording that he hopes Simeon's all right. But, these things happen. It's football. If it becomes more of a problem, obviously he's going to have to correct things. But, like I said, it's football. It's going to happen. We just hope that Myles learns from it.
Really, there's one more thing from tonight's game, and it was nothing on the field. But before the game, the Browns announced their inactives, and Jannard Avery was inactive for the second week in a row. You guys heard Jake Burns on our podcast last week talking about how he didn't know until he got to the field last week that he was not going to be playing. And here he's inactive again for week 2. Jack, what's going on here? I know they're asking him to play a different position than what he's used to, but you would think he's better than Chad Thomas, right?
Yeah, the only time we heard Chad Thomas's name, although I did see him out there a few times, was when he got the block in the back penalty. But, I just don't get it. Avery shined as a 5th-round rookie last year in Greg Williams' defense, and you mean to tell me that he's at best a 3rd-string pass rusher on Steve Wilkes' defense? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I know that he was injured during the preseason. Jake mentioned that, and maybe they're getting him up to speed on the scheme, but I just can't understand him being inactive 2 weeks in a row. And you said, we mentioned it during the game, we were talking privately about trade him if he's not going to play. Obviously there's some big names out there potentially on the block. One got moved tonight, but if you're not going to play him, use him as a trade chip to get something. Get an offensive lineman in here. Get some kind of talent in here, because if you're not utilizing Jannard Avery, then it's a pity to him, because he's super talented and he deserves to be on the field somewhere.
Yeah, and you would think that maybe he could even make an impact on special teams, but he went through that injury. Hopefully in a couple of weeks or even next week, they'll be able to get him active for the game and hopefully utilize him. It's shocking to me that they haven't found a way to utilize him yet, and he's been inactive for the first 2 weeks of the season. Only injury from tonight's game was David Njoku. He got upended on a bad throw from Baker that was kind of laid over the middle. I saw a couple people on Twitter call it a hospital ball. That was a very dangerous throw that he made, and not the good kind of dangerous. Njoku landed on his shoulder and on his head. Hopefully he's okay. Nick Chubb was banged up. He took a nasty hit from Adams there in the secondary. He was out for a minute, but he came back in at the end of the game, so hopefully he'll be okay for next Sunday. But really, that was it when it comes to injuries. The rest of the AFC North this week, Lamar Jackson completely dominated the Arizona Cardinals, threw for over 250 yards, ran for over 125 yards. The Ravens are now 2-0 on the season. The Cincinnati Bengals got blown out by the San Francisco 49ers, who the Browns play on Monday Night Football in a few weeks. That was 41-17. The Steelers dropped to 0-2 with the loss at home to the Seattle Seahawks. But most importantly in that game, Jack, the Browns lost Ben Roethlisberger for the season, who hurt his elbow. It was a non-contact injury after he threw a pass. He was in excruciating pain, and you could just see the look on his face after he threw the pass. He knew that he was in trouble, and unfortunately, he's going to miss the rest of the regular season for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who will now be forced to start Mason Rudolph, who didn't look too terrible when he came into the game, but obviously that's a huge blow for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it certainly changes the complexion of the AFC North playoff picture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hate to see anybody go down with injury, and I know that, Browns fans were, excited that, Roethlisberger got hurt. I don't want to see anybody get hurt regardless of, our rivals or a player's background or whatnot. It's a shame, especially, Roethlisberger's still in the prime of his career, playing at a high level. But he's bound and determined to make a comeback. It doesn't shock me at all with Ben's competitive nature. But it does change things in the AFC North. And as it stands right now, obviously, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are 0-2. The Browns are obviously 1-1. And Baltimore is 2-0. And I'm going to be honest, they look really good. And, for those that said Lamar Jackson can't throw a football, shame on you, because he's making everybody eat crow regardless of who he's played already. Miami and Arizona, he has looked phenomenal, not just running the football, but throwing the football. So right now it obviously looks like it's the Ravens division to lose, but, there's a lot of football left. As for the Steelers, like you said, Mason Rudolph looked impressive. Obviously he's going to get all the first team reps now, and he's going to rely heavily on James Conner and Juju and the rest of the weapons on the Steelers offense. So I wouldn't expect them to go down without a fight, to say the least.
That's for sure. They always have tough. Plus, before we get to that other news, Drew Brees is also going to be out for about 6 weeks. He tore ligament in his throwing hand. So he's going to be out, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to be forced to replace him. And that obviously changes the playoff picture in the NFC South a little bit. But I think the Saints will be fine with Bridgewater. They still have tremendous playmakers with Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. So I think that they'll be okay while Drew Brees is out. But the other big news that went down during the game tonight is that the Pittsburgh Steelers traded a 2020 first rounder after Ben Roethlisberger was announced being out for the season. They decided to trade their first rounder for next year for Minka Fitzpatrick of the Miami Dolphins. Jack, did this kind of stun you with the fact that the Steelers, who lost their quarterback for the year, traded for a defensive back, and that draft pick could be top 10 if things don't go well with Mason Rudolph?
Right, it very well could be. It doesn't shock me that Pittsburgh did this, because if you read the reports, especially Benjamin Albright, you've seen that Pittsburgh was involved in this, and obviously their secondary has been an issue, so they get an upgrade. Minka Fitzpatrick, who's a hell of a defensive talent, obviously a top 10 pick a year ago, I think. But, like you said, this could be a top 10 pick, but obviously the Steelers are confident that Mason Rudolph can get it done, and they won't have to worry about potentially missing on the future franchise quarterback post Roethlisberger era. But, with the Dolphins, this is a coup for them. They have 5 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts. they have taken the Sashi Brown approach and turned it up a notch. But, they have to hit on the picks, obviously. And you just wonder, what is going to happen next in Miami. I feel bad for their head coach, Brian Flores. I don't think he was probably aware that they were going to do this and completely blow up the franchise. But hopefully he has those guys ready and keep fighting, much like Hugh Jackson did when he was here in Cleveland. But it's a tough time for a Dolphins fan. Obviously, we had to go through that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how their rebuild shakes out.
And, I think they believe they have their quarterback in Josh Rosen. It's just they're
I would disagree with that, honestly.
You think so? Yeah. They invested draft picks in him this past offseason, and I think they signed Fitzpatrick because they knew where this was going to go, and they wanted to do what they can to protect Rosen this year. And I think going into next season, things will look a lot different with the different pieces that they'll be able to add, having 3 first-round draft picks. I would imagine they're going to rebuild the offensive line and maybe look for a playmaker or two. But I think they're trying to let him learn, sit behind Fitzpatrick, and just kind of slowly integrate him into the offense that they want to run going into next season. That way he's able to stay healthy and is ready to go for next year.
I truly think that they are banking on having one of those top picks to get either Justin Herbert or Tua, or maybe they wait a couple years and try to get Trevor Lawrence, although he hasn't been, what people thought he was going to be so far this year. But I don't think they think Rosen is the answer. I could be wrong, but I think they're going in another direction at quarterback.
I guess time will only tell. All right, Jack, as we get on out here, do you have any more thoughts about tonight's performance on Monday Night Football, or are we all good to wrap things up here?
We are good, but don't forget the top dog poll.
Oh, well, then we're not all good. It is after midnight. It's getting close to 1 a.m., so I am kind of tired here. We put out a poll who your 1085 top dog of the game is, and the current results of that poll is Odell Beckham has 58% of the vote. Myles Garrett has 35% of the vote. Austin Seibert has 5% of the vote. And Joe Schobert has 2% of the vote. Jack, do you agree with who the top dog is so far in that poll?
While everybody loves Beckham and he had an unbelievable touchdown, I voted Myles Garrett on this one. He had a monster game despite the penalties. 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 5 QB hits. He was in the backfield consistently tonight, whether it's for the right or wrong reasons. But, for the people that call him overrated, I just want to know what the hell they think what makes him overrated, because he has been everything I expected him to be since we drafted him number 1 overall. And, I cannot wait to get him signed long-term as a Cleveland Brown, because he is one of the most dominant defensive players already in the league. And he's still only 23, 24 years old, and is going to continue to get better. So I went with Myles on this one.
Yeah, I agree with you in the fact that I don't understand why people call him overrated. I don't get it. I went with Odell. Having 160 yards receiving, the 89-yard touchdown pass, which completely changed the momentum in the game, kind of sealed it for the Browns. We were waiting for this game. We thought we were going to get it last week, but he was able to do it in his return to MetLife Stadium. Had that long touchdown. Like I said, have almost 160 yards, so he is my top dog of the game this week. Jack, go ahead and plug what you got so we can get on and out of here.
As always, follow me on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE, and stay tuned for some projects coming up. I hope you all will enjoy them.
That's for darn sure. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki, J-O-K-I. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We absolutely appreciate it. It's our first 1085 victory pod of the year. So I'll leave you with this, especially tonight after a huge win, and that is, go Browns.